Merciful Mother, Fickle Father by TheWitchBoy. Rating, teen and up audiences. Archive warning, no archive warnings apply. Category, general. Fandoms, Superboy, Superman. Relationships, Connell, Connor Kent, and Lex Luthor. Mercy Graves and Connell, Connor Kent. Miss Lee and Lex Luthor. Tim Drake and Connell, Connor Kent. Bart Allen and Tim Drake and Connell, Connor Kent, and Cassie Sandmark. Characters, Lex Luthor, Miss Lee, Connell, Connor Kent, Mercy Graves, Tim Drake, Core 4, DCU. Additional tags, Zine, Superboy, Superzine, Superboy, Superzine, Superboy, Superzine Fic, 90s Connell, Connor Kent, Lex Luthor is Connell, Connor Kent's parent, Mercy Graves is Connell, Connor Kent's parent, Miss Lee is Lex Luthor's PA, Pretty, Connell, Connor Kent, Teenage Rebellion, Good Parent, Lex Luthor. He's trying, he's just not doing very well, but he's trying, I swear. Hijinks and Shenanigans, Press and Tabloids, Family Dynamics, Podfic Welcome. Summary. The headline was something about a philanthropic venture that Wayne had spread to Metropolis. The heading under that read Superman and Lex Luthor, Love Story or Conflict of Interest, and had Lois Lane's byline on it. Lex frowned, slowly. Then Miss Lee tapped the gossip section. Superman's secret son, how Lex Luthor harnessed Superman's DNA to further his own gains. Bylined by Cat Grant. Con turns petty into an art form. Written for the Superboy Superzine. Author's notes. This was my first fic for the Superboy Superzine. It was a lot of fun to write, and I've been excited to share it here, as well as in the Zine. And then, of course, I keep forgetting to post it here. But I got there, eventually. The slaps of the Daily Planet's news and gossip sections hitting Lex's mahogany death side by side was the first sound in probably the past hour. Lex looked up at Miss Lee, already exasperated. I told you that I would not be interrupted for the next hour at least. Read. Miss Lee tapped the desk between the two sections of the newspaper with a neatly manicured forefinger, a deep matte red that precisely matched her $40 YSL colored velvet cream liquid lipstick in Club Bordeaux. Lex glared at her and set his pen down in restraint, but ominous click. He bit back his retorts. Lee always went out over him anyway. It was easier to do just what she wanted and get it over with. Sometimes, he really thought he should fire her. Unfortunately, she was quite valuable. Not nearly as replaceable as the other hirelings. He turned his attention to the news section, which was on his right. The headline was something about a philanthropic venture that Wayne had spread to Metropolis, as if Metropolis needed any help from the likes of a Gothamite, but the heading under that, still on the front page, but in less of a place of prominence, read Superman and Lex Luthor, Love Story or Conflict of Interest, and had Lois Lane's byline on it. Lex frowned, slowly. Miss Lee tapped the gossip section. Instead of turning the page to read Lois's article in the full, he turned to look at the other portion of the newspaper. Gossip, society nonsense, tabloid crap, but packaged to look like actual news. Superman's secret son, how Lex Luthor harnessed Superman's DNA to further his own gains. Bylined by Cat Grant. Lex's brow furrowed further. He set his jaw and looked up to Lee's eyes. How did this get by us? He asked. His voice was even controlled, but he could practically feel the blood pressure actively rising. Are these both about Connor? Who would talk to the press if we have a leak? Mercy did, Lee said, curt and disapproving. But she was always curt and disapproving. Mercy? Yes. Lex leaned back in his chair, pinching the bridge of his nose. Why? He took a steadying breath, dropping his hand, and started over, so as not to snap at Lee. Why did Mercy do that? If he couldn't trust his own android bodyguard, who, exactly, was he supposed to be putting his trust in? The clone asked her to, Miss Lee said. Her derision curled her lips slightly, but Lex could sympathize. Connor was, for all intents and purposes, a teenager. Belatedly, Lex processed what Lee said. Connor asked her to. Connor asked her to what, exactly? Talk to the press? Tell this story? He motioned to the newspaper section. To reporters? What was his goal? Lex was going to figure out how to ground Connor as soon as possible, and for as long as possible. I believe the motivation behind the clone's ill-advised antics was, quote, to punish Lex for not taking him to the water park last Friday, Miss Lee deadpanned. Lex leaned forward, propping both elbows on his desk, and covered his mouth with both hands. He looked at the vague middle distance for a long moment. The water park? His voice was small, almost awestruck. This is about the water park? I told him I'd... He rubbed his hands over his face. I told him I would have him taken to the water park next Friday. Note how you did not offer to take him yourself. His gaze snapped into focus on Miss Lee. What? She raised a single eyebrow, imperious in a way few could even dream of matching. I'm busy. He must understand that. I don't know why you think complaining to me will clarify things to him, Miss Lee said. Lex resisted the urge to drop his head against his desk, but he resisted the urge by a very narrow margin. Mercy tapped Con on the shoulder with a rolled-up copy of the Daily Planet, then stood at attention once more when he accepted it. Con grinned at her. Thanks! He unrolled the newspaper and scanned through the headlines. His grin widened when he came across Lois Lane's piece. Oh ho! Superman and Lex Luthor. Love story or conflict of interests. Talk about an incendiary title. We did it! He threw an arm over the back of the bench he'd taken over, elbowing at Mercy excitedly. Mercy didn't respond, though if one looked closely, they might have been able to see in her expression a brief, fond softening that the android shouldn't have been capable of. Miss Grant has a piece as well. You'll find it in the gossip section, yeah. Con returned his attention to the fast-crumpling newspaper. He flipped through it, tossing single-page ad sections as they fell away from the folded-over sections. Discarded pages gathering around him like pigeons around someone with birdseed, or seagulls around a child in the middle of dropping french fries. Oh, she's on point, though. Con showed Mercy the smaller, mid-paper headline. Superman's secret son. How Lex Luthor harnessed Superman's DNA to further his own gains. For someone who makes shit up, she's very close to the truth there, isn't she? Indeed. Mercy leaned closer politely. Con hopped up. Awesome! Let's go find Tim. I want to show him these. Timothy is not in state currently, Mercy said. Con waved her off. So it's a bit of a drive. What's Lex going to do? Ground me? All I have to do is pretend I don't know what grounding is. Then he is on the sun without any sunscreen. Mercy processed his idiom for a bit. His poor bald head is gonna burn, Con muttered. I mean, I guess all of him would burn if he were on the sun. What's up, Pops? Con burst into Lex's office with his usual amount of energy. That is, with too much energy. He was even chewing gum. Loudly. Even imagining keeping his energy that high consistently had Lex feeling incredibly tired. Connor clomped his way over to Lex's desk and around one side, then threw himself bodily on the desk, as if there weren't other chairs in Lex's office. There were plenty of other chairs in Lex's office, though admittedly not one near his desk, besides his own. Are we going to the water park? Because my friend Tim... Connor, get off my desk. It's not for sitting. Do you know how much solid mahogany costs? Lex asked. He snapped his gum thoughtfully. Like 2 to 5K, right? No, Lex blinked. Yes, actually. Why did Connor know how much his desk cost? Cool, 'cause don't you blow that much on, like... He made a motion to his hair and peered at Lex over his ridiculous sunglasses. Head polish? This is exactly why Lex didn't like children. Bullies, the lot of them. Connor, get off my desk, Lex repeated firmly. Connor swung his legs back and forth and blew a bubble in electric yellow bubblegum, staring right at Lex the whole time. Once the bubble popped and it made its way back into Connor's mouth, he cleared his throat. So, are we going to the water park or not? Because my friend Tim told me about a really cool water park, like down in New Jersey. By the way, where exactly is New Jersey? South, Lex deadpanned. The state right below us. Really? Yes. Oh, cool. That's not that far then, Connor decided. What about the water park, huh? This isn't about the water park. Connor hopped off the desk, rounded the side, and started towards the door. Connor, where are you going? If he had hair, Lex was pretty sure he'd go gray early, as a result of stress and frustration Lex consistently experienced due to Connor's antics. If it's not about the water park, he turned to face Lex, continuing backwards toward the door. Then what's the point? I'm gonna go do something fun. Connor, this is not how this was supposed to go, Lex snapped. He took a deep breath. We need to... Connor! The door closed behind Connor. Lex dropped his head against his desk and stayed there. Outside the door to Lex's office, he could hear Connor. Yo, Mercy, can we go to the water park? Lex lifted his head, then dropped it against the desk. Thud. Of course, Connor, Mercy responded, professional as ever. And nothing. Mercy had just left, without conferring with her boss, her owner. She was an android, for fuck's sake. She shouldn't have been able to leave without Lex's permission. Lex's door opened, and the professional, sharp click of Miss Lee's black Louis Vuitton heels and the red undersides of the heels were probably an exact match for her choice of lipstick shade for the day. She was precise like that. Lex didn't look up. However, he couldn't be sure. Mr. Lex, Lee greeted. Miss Lee. Lex didn't raise his head. Mercy has left work early today. Lex scoffed. With a clone, of course. She's an android. She doesn't leave work any more than a toaster leaves work. Lex finally sat up, leaning back against his chair. This was the level at which Connor left him, lowered him to. His professionalism was bled from him until he had stooped to the level of hitting his desk with his head intentionally. Unbelievable. Lex settled back against his chair and crossed his arm. Don't blame me for your own failings, Miss Lee said. My failings? Mercy isn't... You elected to use the android as an incubation chamber for the clone when the lab was compromised, Miss Lee interrupted. You also elected not to reset the android when it was noted that the modifications to her core to accommodate the fetal clone had caused an error in her AI. We didn't know if adjusting her programming while she housed the clone would harm the clone, Lex snapped. Then why was she not reset or reprogrammed when the clone was removed to larger containment? Miss Lee asked. Lex glared at her. She wasn't impressed. Lex looked away from her, tightening his crossed arms. And now you're stuck with her rebellions, because you know the clone would be upset if you took away, essentially, his plaything, Lee said. All right. You have a point. A few, actually. Yes, fine. Con slid into the back of Lex's personal car. Did you achieve what you wished to? Mercy started the car and glanced at Con through the rearview window. Con grinned and held up a credit card between two fingers. Yup, and he didn't even notice the nudge of TTK poking around his wallet. Everything's on him today, and he's not going to know until Lee inevitably brings it up in next month's financial statements. Sucks for him, huh? Mercy gave him an acknowledging hum. She had to learn how to make an acknowledgement sound. Lex didn't much care if Mercy verbalized that she was paying attention. She was just a machine to him. But Con very much preferred to treat Mercy like a person, and liked to have her treat him like a person back. Personhood was rather new for the both of them. What are your plans today? Mercy pulled out of the reserved parking spot, Lex's reserved parking spot, and started on the winding route out of the Lex Core parking garage. She knew that the plans included Gotham. Con told her that much, but he hadn't gone into much detail beyond that. Not much. Con settled into his seat. He startled a bit and buckled himself, then settled back again. Normal people buckled themselves. Con liked to play at being a normal person. We're gonna pick up Tim and see what suggestion he has for IDK. Gotham stuff. Mercy made a disapproving noise. Gotham was not to her standards of safety, which she had told Con a number of times over the past few months. Don't worry, Merce. Tim knows the safe parts of Gotham. We'll be fine. Besides, I'm bulletproof. In Gotham, safe is a matter of opinion, Mercy said. Connor sidled up to Lex, hands shoved deep into jeans pockets. Lex hadn't been aware that he owned jeans, much less the torn jeans that were more tear than jean. Pops, Connor greeted. He had a wide grin on his face, like he'd already gotten whatever it was that he wanted. What are you wearing, Connor? Lex snapped. Like 'em? He did a quick spin to show off his jeans, and where he had gotten the faded Superman shirt. Where on earth did you get those? Lex wrinkled his nose. Gotham. Gotham? Lex didn't think it could get any worse. He shouldn't have underestimated Connor. It If he thought about it, he could place the precise day that Connor would have gone off on an ill-advised Gotham field trip, being that his personal car and its mercy-shaped driver had disappeared for nearly the whole of that Thursday. Yeah, my friend Tim, he showed me around. We went to the thrift shop where he got all his awful shirts and stuff. It was huge, man. Tim this, Tim that. Lex didn't even know who this Tim was, but he was clearly part of the problem of Connor's rebellion. Is this the same Tim that told you about the water park you wanted so desperately to go to? Lex curled his lip in derision. He certainly hoped there was only one Tim to contend with. Duh? Con slid his sunglasses out of his hair and over his eyes. As usual, he seemed blithely unaware of how irritating he was. Gotham, Lex scoffed. I can't believe you went to Gotham. Mercy took me. Lex took a deep breath. I've been meaning to talk to you about Mercy, he said. Connor stopped him with a hand. Pops, if you're about to suggest a system restart, we're gonna have a problem, yeah? That's my mom. Lex blanched. Your what? My mom. Connor Alexander Luthor, Lex snapped. Mercy is an android. She's not your mother. She is no one's mother. The most mothering thing she has done in her life was to house you during your... Lex cut himself off. That's what biological mothers did, usually. Was that... He turned to glare at Connor. Connor grinned back at him. Yeah, during my fetal development stages. I know. That's how I know she's my mom. There was a duh there, obvious but unsaid. Lex glared at him. He raised an eyebrow at Lex over his sunglasses. Lex growled and turned to stalk away. No system restarts then, right? Connor called at him. Lex scoffed. We'll talk about this later, as well as your choice in clothing and your definition of mother. He glanced over his shoulder to make sure Connor was listening. Connor was actively mid-eye roll. Not for the first time. Lex wished that they could have gotten Connor to a further along maturity. Teenager was a pain in the ass. Unfortunately for all of them, a cascading system failure had made that impossible. It had also made it impossible to put Connor back in the tube to fix his maturation. We'll talk about this later, Lex reiterated. Yeah, whatever. 2 more shopping binges, an amusement park visit, an impromptu field trip to a water park later. Lex had to admit, no, he and Connor probably weren't going to be talking about Gotham or Mercy things later. The teenage-shaped infant was too good at deflecting and playing dumb for just the right parts of conversations. He was also making more friends, all of which were equally bad influences. A Bart and a Cassie and the ever-present Tim were more frequent names involved in his misadventures. Drake, Lee finally informed Lex. What? Timothy Drake, formerly of Drake Industries. Miss Lee looked over the frames of her glasses at Lex. Do you mean, I believe the adoption goes through in the next few weeks, yes, Miss Lee said. No wonder Gotham was such a big problem lately. Connor had gotten himself mixed up with one of the Wayne's brood. Lex dropped his face into his hands. Lee, cancel my appointments for the rest of the day. I have some calls I need to make. I highly doubt any attempt to reason with Mr. Drake's adoptive father will be fruitful, Miss Lee said. One can hope. That makes it 4 months, Tim said. Who had the closest bet? Cassie snatched the dollars from him. I guessed 5 months. I should have just undercut to me, Con scowled at her. I should have had it, and let's face it, without Miss Lee, it would have taken a meeting with W.E. for Lex to even realize. That was just to undercut me, Con scowled at her. I should have had it, and let's face it, without Miss Lee, it would have taken a meeting with W.E. for Lex to realize. That wasn't likely to happen for another few months. Yeah, but Miss Lee counts towards Lex's resources, and we're not applying a post-game handicap, Tim said. I really thought Miss Lee'd get it down in 2 months, though. Are you sure it hasn't been 3 years? Bart asked. It feels like 3 years. No, Bart, it hasn't been 3 years since we had started betting on when Lex would realize that Con's Tim is Bruce's Tim, Tim said, in that reasonable, semi-parental friend voice that sometimes fooled people into thinking he was more responsible than Cassie. He was not. Feels like 3 years, Bart muttered. Con ruffled the mess of auburn hair. Yeah, kinda does, he agreed. But let's let Cassie have it. I earned this fair and square, clone face. Cassie gave him a prim, gloaty smile. Con stuck out his tongue very maturely. Author's notes. Thanks for reading. Reader's notes. This one was both a long time coming and a bit of a struggle. mostly due to a lot of the homophones and my dogs wanting to sit real close to me today. I hope you all enjoyed. Have a good one! Oh, and please make sure to leave the original creator, TheWitchBoy, all the comments and kudos. Have a good one. Bye-bye.